It was supposed to be a relaxed royal custom, a peaceful Sunday afternoon on the Windsor estate where children from two different royal branches could play together under the watchful eyes of their famous families. Prince George, slowly growing into his destiny with quiet determination, was one of the youngest present. He had attended these gatherings before, always under Kate's careful supervision. But this time, things went very differently. What began as a cheerful meet-up between cousins and step-cousins quickly took a darker turn. Palace chatter began swirling. Prince George had been bullied, and the culprit was allegedly one of Queen Camilla's grandsons. Though the child wasn't formally titled, Camilla had spent years trying to integrate her family deeper into royal circles, pushing for education perks, ceremonial roles, and eventually future titles. Some within the royal household thought she was overstepping, but most stayed quiet. Until now. George returned home in tears. Kate immediately noticed the change in her son. His hunched posture, his silence, the sadness in his eyes. When she pressed him, he explained in simple, honest terms that another boy hadn't just teased him. He had mocked his destiny. The child reportedly made unkind comments about George's future role as king, his family, and even his late grandmother, Princess Diana. Kate was furious. William was crushed. Behind palace walls, a line had been crossed, and actions were swift. Prince William made a decision with historic consequences. Camilla's grandson, who had been poised to receive honorary royal recognition someday, would now be excluded from any future consideration. No debates, no second chances. The palace refused to comment publicly, but sources say Queen Camilla is outraged. King Charles has tried to remain neutral, though insiders say his silence speaks volumes. The public, meanwhile, have been reading between the lines, understanding that in a monarchy built on lineage, protecting the heir isn't just policy, it's survival. What was designed to be a charming family photo op turned into something far more dramatic. Beneath Balmoral's scenic beauty, tartan blankets on trimmed lawns, corgis running about, royal children playing tag between slices of Victoria sponge, tensions boiled over. The event was originally King Charles's idea, a bid to patch up quiet fractures within the family by bringing William's children and Camilla's grandchildren together. Camilla reportedly saw it as a strategic opportunity to showcase her lineage in a softer, more accepted light. Kate, however, wasn't convinced. Known for her composure, she nonetheless had misgivings about her children being pushed too closely into Camilla's orbit, especially George. By mid-afternoon, trouble had flared. As the adults chatted over tea, the children were left to play in a loosely supervised corner of the gardens. A casual football match became heated. Words were exchanged. Then it spiraled. Camilla's eldest grandchild allegedly taunted George, first about the game, then about his position. "Do you think you're better than us because you'll wear a crown?" one child was overheard saying. What might have been dismissed as childish teasing became cruel. George, freshly 11, reportedly tried to walk away, only to be followed and mocked over his royal training and future role. But before we continue, we'd love for you to hit the subscribe button if you're enjoying this video. If you just did, we truly appreciate it. Now, let's get back to the main content. Later that day, a senior staffer was told that George had even been called a mummy's boy. A painful jab for a child who cherishes the almost sacred memory of the late Princess Diana. Security personnel quickly separated the children, but it was too late. George, who normally carried himself with royal composure, was visibly shaken. A discreet family bodyguard escorted him away before the press could notice. By the time Catherine was informed, her son was already crying in the car. The rest of the afternoon unfolded with awkward smiles and stiff chatter. Camilla, either unaware of the full situation or choosing not to address it, continued to host as planned. But according to those close to Catherine, her face had hardened, her polite smile frozen, her hand gripping Princess Charlotte's tighter than usual. Once back at their private residence, Catherine sat George down away from staff and gently pressed for details. What he told her left her speechless. The taunts hadn't been childish nonsense. They used sharp, adult phrases. It sounded as if Camilla's grandson had been repeating things heard at home. That realization rattled Catherine to her core. Not just that her son had been targeted, but that generational prejudice had seeped down into the children. William was summoned immediately as George went to bed early, red-eyed and silent. William sat beside his wife, stricken. This was more than bullying. It was a haunting echo of the past. He could not, and would not, stay quiet. This time he would protect his own child at any cost. As their car approached Adelaide Cottage that evening, tension filled the air. George said nothing. His usual calm demeanor was shadowed by humiliation. Catherine kept a steady hand on his back, her instincts blazing. Once inside, she pulled him close and softly asked him to recount everything. He did, halting at first, then more firmly, describing name-calling, jeers at his future role, a jibe calling William a puppet king, and worst of all, cruel laughter at Princess Diana's name. Catherine's expression shifted. Her eyes turned icy, not with anger that erupted, but with the chilling resolve of a mother whose child had been deeply hurt. According to an aide, her response was measured and fierce. "That boy will never be near my children again." She meant every word. For years, she had played by the palace's rules, smiling, enduring, watching as Camilla's family was brought closer into the royal fold. But this was a line she would not allow to be crossed. Within the hour, she had fully briefed William. What followed behind closed doors was described as one of the most emotionally charged conversations the couple had ever had. Catherine didn't shed tears or raise her voice. She simply reminded her husband of Diana, of how silence had led to tragedy before, and warned that history must not repeat itself. George, she insisted, would never feel unsafe in his own family again. "You're the heir. Start acting like it," she reportedly told him. William listened and agreed. The next morning, Catherine canceled all appearances and stayed home with George and Charlotte, a quiet act of protest. Privately, she issued a stern instruction to palace staff: document everything. She wanted a full written record, not a cover-up. A formal message was hand-delivered to the king's private office. There had been an incident involving Prince George, and the Prince and Princess of Wales requested an immediate audience. Within 24 hours, they met with King Charles. He expressed sympathy, but Camilla brushed aside the concerns, reportedly calling it just childish bickering. When asked if her grandson would face consequences, she laughed it off. "They'll forget about it in a week." Catherine didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her unblinking stare said everything. She was no longer simply the Princess of Wales. She was a mother, and she was drawing a line in the sand. The battle had officially turned personal. Prince William had spent a lifetime balancing loyalty to his father with duty to the crown, forever shadowed by the tragedy of his mother's past. But when it came to his own child, there was no room for hesitation, diplomacy, or protocol. Something shifted inside him. The day after meeting privately with King Charles, William returned to Kensington Palace and stunned even his closest advisors. Pacing his study, he assembled his senior aides and announced, "Camilla's grandson will never receive a royal title. Not now. Not ever. This ends here." There was no debate, no committee, no palace mediation. What made William's move so shocking wasn't only his final verdict. It was that he acted without first seeking his father's approval. For years, Camilla had quietly edged her children and grandchildren toward royal legitimacy, lobbying for honorary roles, public visibility, and increased participation at state functions. The public might not have noticed, but William certainly had. And now, with George wounded and Camilla refusing to accept blame, He saw it clearly, a calculated effort to advance her bloodline into the monarchy's future. To him, it was intolerable. The child who taunted George symbolized far more than a playground bully. He embodied everything William believed was dangerous about Camilla's use of position, exploiting Charles's guilt, manipulating circumstance, and blurring lines between duty and favoritism. William's declaration was simple. Royal privilege isn't granted by proximity. It's earned through respect, service, and honor. One insider said William's mood during internal briefings was ice cold. When an aide cautiously suggested that perhaps a private apology from Camilla's family might resolve matters, William responded sharply, "My son doesn't need an apology. He needs protection." He went further, decreeing Camilla's grandson would be excluded from all future family events involving George, Charlotte, or Louis. No birthdays, no holiday gatherings, and certainly no rehearsals for trooping the color. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Word spread quickly through palace circles. King Charles, caught off guard, reportedly walked his study floor in stunned silence. He had expected the crisis to fade quietly. Instead, William, usually measured and cooperative, had drawn a permanent line. For William, this wasn't mere discipline. It was about control, about sending a message not only to Camilla, but to the institution. The era of overlooking disrespect, especially toward Diana's legacy or his children, was over. He would be a father first, a future monarch second, and under his reign, no relative of Camilla's, however cozy with the crown, would be elevated to royal rank. Meanwhile, Camilla received the news over tea in her drawing room at Clarence's house. At first, she dismissed it as a misunderstanding. "That can't be right," she snapped, insisting Charles would never allow such a move. But as the full picture emerged, William's direct appeal to his father, his refusal to bend, and the official documentation recorded by palace staff, the reality sank in. Setting her teacup down with trembling hands, she seethed. "He's gone too far. This isn't justice. It's vengeance." Camilla's anger wasn't only rooted in her grandson's actions. It was about legacy. She had spent years fighting to weave her family into the fabric of the monarchy. When she first married Charles, her children and grandchildren were kept firmly on the sidelines, treated as outsiders rather than true royals. She accepted it for a time, but slowly she began nudging them forward. A walk in a procession here, a seat at a Jubilee concert there, an invitation to a school event next to royalty. It was never officially sanctioned, but it was intentional. Her quiet mission was to ensure the Parker Bowles name mattered, to prove her family wasn't just baggage but part of the crown's future. And in one single decision, William had shattered that dream. She demanded an immediate meeting with Charles, storming into his study with William's formal letter in hand. Her voice, rarely raised inside palace corridors, rang out furiously. "He's humiliated us. This is a child, Charles, a child!" But Charles, increasingly weary and conscious of public scrutiny, didn't provide the backing she expected. Those close to him said he was torn. He felt for Camilla, but he understood the broader implications. William was stepping into his authority as the future king. With his own reign already delicate, Charles couldn't risk open conflict with his heir. "I won't overrule him," he said softly. "He's protecting his family. We must respect that." Camilla reportedly went pale, turned sharply, and slammed the door behind her, a rare breach of palace composure that stunned nearby staff. Later that evening, she canceled her public engagement citing a migraine, an excuse few believed. She said almost nothing over dinner and refused to mention William's name. But insiders were clear. She would not forget this. One senior official put it bluntly, "Camilla may smile in public, but behind the scenes, a line has been crossed." She no longer sees William as a stepson, but as a rival. For decades, Camilla had played the patient long game, and with a single stroke, William demonstrated it was already over. And she had lost. Meanwhile, the public, famously protective of royal children, especially the heir, quickly focused on Prince George. He has long captured national affection as the embodiment of the monarchy's future, poised, gentle, and noble beyond his years. When the first quiet whispers surfaced about an incident involving him and Camilla's grandson, tabloids began dropping hints. Headlines like "Royal Rift Behind Closed Doors" and "Heir Targeted at Family Event" sparked curiosity, and soon the full story leaked. Then came the explosive headline: Prince George mocked by step-relative. William responds with title ban. The reaction was instant. Social media erupted in sympathy for George and support for William. Comments flooded in. Good for William. Protect him. And Diana would be proud. Artists drew images of George in a small crown with captions like, "More royal at 11 than many adults ever will be." Even royal commentators weighed in. A former palace spokesman told ITV's morning show, "This is a defining moment for Prince William. He chose fatherhood over politics, and the public clearly approves." Privately, aides noticed a shift in public sentiment. Camilla, once tentatively accepted by many after years of image rehabilitation, saw her approval ratings drop sharply. Conversely, William and Kate's popularity soared. Parents across the UK wrote letters to Kate, sharing their own stories of children being bullied and thanking her for standing up for hers. Some of the letters moved her to tears. But the most powerful moment came a week later during a quiet Sunday church outing. As William, Kate, George, and Charlotte stepped from their car, the waiting crowd broke into spontaneous applause. Gentle, heartfelt, supportive. George didn't entirely understand why, but Kate did. She leaned down, squeezed his hand, and whispered, "They're proud of you, darling." She squeezed his hand and whispered something the cameras couldn't catch. But the message was clear. The public was watching, and they were firmly on his side. Throughout the long, storied history of the British monarchy, many battles have been waged softly, behind velvet curtains, under the guise of tradition, whispered rather than spoken. But this felt different. It wasn't about constitutional protocol or official policy. It was personal. And in protecting his son, Prince William drew a public line no future monarch has so clearly dared to draw. Camilla had spent years carefully reshaping her image, edging her family closer to legitimacy, slowly reworking a narrative she once tried to escape from. But that painstaking progress unraveled within days, not because of politics or scandal, but because a child was hurt, and that child's parents refused to stay quiet. Kate stood firm with elegance. William moved decisively, and young George, without uttering a word, carried what many saw as a moral victory, the assurance that his parents would always fight for him. The monarchy is evolving. Honors will no longer be passed along through private deals. Silence is no longer the cost of keeping the peace. The future of the crown won't hinge on rituals or ceremony, but on integrity. William has made it undeniably clear he will defend that value however he must. For Camilla, the fallout is isolating. Whatever ground she'd gained over the years has slipped away. Her grandson's future within the royal sphere has vanished. The broader ambitions of the Parker Bowles clan have dimmed. Still, the true impact of that one unsettling moment, that single cruel exchange, continues to ripple across the realm. And in the quiet that follows, one truth stands. A new royal precedent has been set. Titles must be earned. Respect must be mutual. There are no second chances where the heir's dignity is concerned. This wasn't simply a family conflict. It was a reshaping of royal power. And it wasn't fought with weapons or declarations, but with a father's resolve and a mother's determination. The monarchy from this point forward will never quite be the same.